Hi folks, welcome back to another one of Emmanuel's resources in the series of not just surviving, but thriving at home. I am thrilled to have back with us today a really gifted individual. I'm sure if you didn't get the chance to hear some of the great resources she shared with us earlier, make sure you pop back. There's a bunch of great resources right here on this very website, but you'll find some great information from Cameo Rogers. Cameo is our Emmanuel Life Enrichment Manager at Emmanuel. She oversees all of life enrichment at Emmanuel, which is a really big role, and she helps bring to life all sorts of great lifelong learning and activities and ways in which we engage with our residents on a daily basis in our communities. But certainly in these times that are a little bit different right now, each of us is trying to, as I mentioned, not just survive, but thrive at home. And Cameo's brought to us a whole bunch of great resources. So again, I'm Jennifer Connect, Vice President of Marketing and Sales. Hello, Cameo, and welcome back.
Thanks for having me back. I'm excited to talk about this today.
So today we're really going to dig into a subject that I know is very near and dear to your heart. You are, in fact, an expert in every way possible with all things memory support and dementia. Tell us a little bit more about that. I know you're really well credentialed and you have great training and bring just some really great insights and have brought some great ways in which we are engaging with folks who have memory support needs, and also those who are not quite needing memory support, full-on memory support in our communities, but maybe just want to keep their brain in tip-top condition. So Cameo, tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I appreciate you saying that. It's a field that I am certainly very passionate about, both out of my professional history is really in this subject, but also my personal history with my family, and I'll talk about that in here in a second. But I am a recreational therapist by trade and started out my career working in inpatient psychiatric care. And in that field was really drawn to working with individuals who were placed in our psychiatric unit who were really nursing home residents who had dementia and a psychiatric illness and were struggling to manage their agitation and anxiety. And so I was drawn to that population to help support them and help them with their independence and help the team understand them better. But that really stems from the love that I have for working with seniors. I was fortunate enough to have multiple great-grandparents until high school, and I was very close to my great-grandparents and my great-grandmother Ruth especially, and my great-grandmother Anne, who both lived with Alzheimer's disease. And I got to see firsthand as a family member not knowing how to respond or what to do when they would repeat stories or when they would have these out-of-character responses, as one of my mentors calls them. And so this has been something that's been a full circle journey for me to learn. I am a National Council Certified Dementia Practitioners trainer. So I train a curriculum for that national organization. I teach an Alzheimer's class for the Nebraska Healthcare Association twice a year. And I've been fortunate enough in my career to be mentored by some amazing dementia practitioners, including Sandra Simpson, who wrote the National Council curriculum and was one of the first people to really advocate for staff training for dementia care across the country. And then my dear friend and mentor, Erin Benito, who is a dementia expert and dementia communication coach. And that really got me going down the field of learning more about gerontology. And I'm currently working on my master's degree in gerontology at UNO.
That's fantastic. I'm sure, folks, if you could see Cameo's smile right now, you would see the passion shining through, but I guarantee that you can hear it in her voice. And I think that's just extraordinary, because that same passion you've brought to Emmanuel, we're going to get to exactly how you've infused some of this great passion and all that great knowledge that you have into Emmanuel's memory support programming and into what we're doing in our memory support areas. But before we get there, let's talk about brain health. This is obviously a topic that all of us should have near and dear to our heart, really. I think our brains are very important parts of us having a really great enriched life. And when we talk about brain health today, you know, it's a pretty big topic, but if you would, for us, in particular, as we're all thinking about like hunkering down at home, how would you boil down the topic of brain health?
That's a great question. I'm going to give you my non-medical definition, more of a wellness perspective, so to speak. But I would say that in the field of gerontology, we would be looking at maintaining a person's highest level of function, so they can live a dignified and experience as they age and have the best quality life as possible for as long as possible. We study a concept in gerontology called the compression of morbidity, which means that we're trying to compress or shorten the amount of time that somebody has in their life where they're dealing with multiple conditions that impact their independence. So brain health is really just focusing on all of the things that you can do to keep yourself healthy, well, and living as independent as possible for as long as possible, as close as possible to the end of your life.
So when we talk about healthy aging, really we're talking about healthy brain aging. If we keep our brains healthy and active, we can have a wonderful, enriching, fulfilling life. I love that.
Amen. Amen.
So tell us, what effect does brain health really have on memory loss and dementia? I mean, certainly that has some effect as we age, but give us a little bit more insight about that in particular.
Great question. So another thing that I think is important to understand about brain health is it's not really just in the way that we think. The brain is something that impacts everything that we do. And so we're really talking about physical wellness and cognitive wellness and social wellness and emotional wellness and occupational wellness. And there's a lot of things that play into this. And so when we have a brain that is healthy and functioning well, meaning that we can sequence tasks together and we can track our appointments and our medications, and we can retain knowledge about what we're supposed to be doing today and tomorrow. And when we can do all of those things, it helps us to maintain a higher level of function and not require as much assistance. And so the more that we are thinking about the ways that we can promote wellness, whether it is being physically active, getting enough sleep, whether it is making sure that we're having good nutritional habits, things that manage inflammation in the brain, whether it's us being socially active and engaged. There's a lot of research that supports that loneliness and social isolation can have a really negative impact on the brain and thinking and can lead to increased risk for dementia. There's a lot of variables that can have an impact on brain health overall. But what we know is that the more that we focus on our overall wellness and doing those things that are good for our heart and good for our overall health and well-being, the lower the risk becomes from the factors that we can control.
For any parents out there that are thinking about this, I mean, we all know intuitively and probably have been taught along the way as we were watching the development of our children that brains develop, in concert with or are kind of the foundation of development of language, of course, motor skills, of higher levels of emotional intelligence and being able to process and discern things. So it makes sense that it's so interwoven into, all of life. And if we can do things to keep it active and have to do things on the physical side as well as the nutritional side, as well as just exercising the brain and staying socially and otherwise engaged, it does make sense that we can stay independent longer and we can take care of ourselves better. I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand. It makes sense. Although it's funny because I think brain health and just in general, our brains are probably something that we take for granted until they stop working or until something starts to happen. It's somewhat similar to health. You don't see it every day, so you just think it's going to work. And then, if you're not doing things to keep it engaged and active and used all the time, it does also make sense that it diminishes a little bit. Well, Cameo, share with us some, because we're all hunkering down right now. We're at home. And I know you mentioned loneliness and social isolation and all of those things, which are a very real reality of what's going on right now in the world. I mean, we're all trying to protect ourselves as much as possible from COVID-19 and, of course, stop the spread of COVID-19. So what are some ways in which we can exercise our brains, keep them engaged, and be aware of, all these different elements that help our brains age in a healthy manner? What are some tips or exercises that you have in your toolbox?
So there are some things that you can do that are very simple and don't really require any extra tools or resources. There are the health factors that you can take care of. So making sure that you're reducing the amount of inflammation in your brain and processed foods, and so eating a better diet, paying attention. Right now, it's really easy to grab the chocolate chip cookies or to grab a bag of chips or whatever it is that's handy, but it's important to realize that all the food that we have is fuel, and our brains run better on certain kinds of fuel. And so we need to really be paying attention to that first, making sure that we're managing the kind of messages that we're taking in our life. Anxiety and fear can certainly diminish our cognitive function. So we want to make sure that we're not getting too involved in negative news and stress that can happen when you inundate your day with that. So making sure you're looking at things like mindfulness practice, which would be an opportunity for you to pause and to be very present in your day, to be mindful of your breathing and how that feels, to be attuned to your body and how that feels, or to just do something simple by taking an object, and it can be any object. It can be a raisin, or it could be an orange, whatever it is, and just really looking at that object, looking at the texture and the color and how it feels in your hands, and just trying to be very present and not stressing about the things that are out of your control. So those are a couple simple things. Another thing that we can do is, as an exercise, is try doing things that we would normally do. If you're right-handed and you normally write right-handed, try writing with your left hand. If you normally brush your hair with your right hand, try it with your left. It's very entertaining when you try to brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. We can rewire ourselves a little bit. There's a plasticity that's in the brain, and we have the ability to stretch and grow. And there's a lot of research that we still don't have, final details to on neurogenesis, but we all have the ability to still grow and create new connections in the brain. And the way that we do that is by challenging ourselves, growing a bit. Some people are using this time right now to use a free application on their smartphone or tablet called Duolingo, and they're learning how to speak basic phrases in Spanish. Some people are going online on their computers or on their smartphones or tablets, and they're learning basic sign language. So learning a new language, taking music lessons. Jennifer and I were talking not too long ago about people who are taking music lessons on Zoom.
Yes.
So there's a lot of different things. It's challenging yourself to try something either new or in a different way.
This is also a subject very near and dear to my heart, in another passion outside of sales and marketing. I'm all about the brain and brain health and the way that the brain can develop and function over time. I love that you brought up some of these really great tips. And you know what, folks, if you haven't, refresh your memory. If maybe you've already watched it, but go back and grab one of the very first resources that we added to this resource hub. And if you hear the conversation that Cameo and I had at that moment, she gave some new ideas on ways in which you can stretch yourself in a comfortable way. So part of keeping your brain healthy is stretching yourself. That's what I'm hearing from you, Cameo. So trying new things so you can create some new neural pathways in your brain and kind of keep it healthy and functioning in different ways. Well, the mason jar idea that you had, writing down, a whole bunch of different things that maybe you've always wanted to try and you just didn't have time, or you thought it was too complicated, on little pieces of paper, putting them in the mason jar, and then, or whatever kind of, jar you have sitting around your house, and pulling out a different one each day, or maybe a couple times a week. I think that's a great way to put to use some of these ideas that you've shared with us today, Cameo.
I agree. Anything that kind of pushes you to go outside of your norm. There are some other tools that are online, or there are some books that people can grab that have brain health exercises in those. And certainly, Jennifer, as we're preparing our tip sheet here, I can add a few of those resources in there. Some of those are subscription resources, and some of them are non-subscription resources. So I'll send those as well on the tip sheet that we prepare.
Perfect. So you'll be able to grab that right here, folks. All you have to do is just click on the link and we'll pull up the tip sheet that Cameo is going to share with some of these great resources, including the app on how you can learn to speak Spanish or another foreign language. I love that. Well, share with us, Cameo, as well, how some of these exercises might be able to help seniors who are already experiencing some memory loss.
It's interesting. People have this perception on people with living with Alzheimer's disease that there's not a possibility of creating pathways in the brain, and there are. It's a different type of learning, and it's certainly not something that we have to be smart about the way that we engage and challenge people who are living with memory loss. But there are some wonderful people that are on the speaking circuit with Alzheimer's disease that have learned how to use their smartphones to give them reminders on appointments, and use things like Alexa or Siri or those web-based helper software voices to help them to track things that they need to remember. So there are multiple examples that I have seen both personally and professionally where we can teach things. It's a lot of time, a lot of repetition, a lot of patience, but there is a possibility. And even if there is not a memory of these things that are taught, it's the concept of challenging someone and allowing them the dignity of being able to try something that they may or may not be able to succeed at all the time. You can't make life failure free. You can try your very best to match whatever challenge you're giving to the skill of the person, but don't be afraid to let them try things. It's important. So yes, there is an ability for people to develop pathways, and it can help to maintain independence a little bit longer if we're providing them the appropriate level of challenge for their current level of function. The biggest thing with that is knowing the strengths that the person with dementia still has. So we can use things that are strengths of theirs, like long learned phrases or songs. We can do the name that tune type challenges with people with dementia. There's programs online. There's a great free program online. There's also a paid version where you as a family member can get trained. It's called Time Slips. And you can engage your loved one with dementia in creative storytelling based off of a photo that they're seeing. And it gives the person with dementia an opportunity to express themselves and contribute, but it's at a level that they can understand. I'll also do things like fill in the proverbs. So you can kill two birds with one, and then the person will fill in stone, or those type of things can work well. Music that they've long learned, and being able to look at a photo that is of something familiar or interesting, and comments bubble up from that. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when it comes to how we're using this concept in a manual, but there is a lot of value to be said for giving appropriate challenges for the person's current strengths.
So there's great hope in ways in which you can enrich brain health no matter where you are in the spectrum. So maybe you're just a person who wants to keep your brain healthy and be aware of that. You can use some of these tips and great exercises that Cameo has shared. Or you have a loved one who has dementia or Alzheimer's of some sort, and you are wanting to engage with them and help them continue to foster as good a brain health as possible. Cameo has just given some great insight in that. And as you kind of you tipped off for everybody, for the folks out there, Cameo, let's step into, I think that's a great segue into what we're doing at a manual. So give us a little bit of insight on how you're incorporating brain games into just in general life enrichment at a manual, and the activities and the different types of lifelong learning and different types of experiences that you're bringing to our residents, but also maybe a little bit of insight into memory support and the memory support programming that we have alive and well at a manual as well.
So there are different elements that we have been putting into place for individuals. Like you were saying, Jennifer, there's different parts of that spectrum of where people are at and strengths that they have and interests that they have. So we started out doing a brain booster trivia challenge and engaging people with long learned knowledge that they would have from back when they were growing up. So it might be filling in a song lyric, or it could be just a fact that they would know from when they were growing up, something, how they lived their life. The only couple television shows that they would have had on their TV at that time when TVs first became popular, or how they would, what kind of games they would play as children. So there was a lot of long learned trivia there. We've also done a really fun game that we've had great success with, and it's kind of similar to that concept of creative storytelling. And so it's a caption this photo challenge. And people with all different levels of cognitive abilities have been able to participate in this. It's pulling a simple, interesting looking photo. It could be a bulldog riding a skateboard wearing sunglasses. And you engage the person and ask them, you know, what do you think this bulldog is thinking right now? Or where could he be going? And what's going to happen next? Where did he come from? There's no wrong answer to those questions. It's just about bringing out what the person's thinking in the moment, whether or not it even is relevant to the photo itself. It's amazing to see what people come up with in the moment. And there's been great success with that. I mentioned the mindfulness activities, and there's been some that are just encouraging people to breathe and take that extra moment to process. Sometimes it's an actual activity where we're encouraging them to hold on to an object and to think about it, and to process and to really engage their senses, which is a great brain health activity. Sometimes it's completing a craft, which requires a skill called sequencing, which would be putting things in the right order at the right time. So there's a lot of things that we have done there. We are also really using technology. We are fortunate that we have some technology in place to support our residents and their loved ones in memory support, to be able to do virtual visits, whether on Skype or FaceTime or Google Duo or any of those type of virtual visit softwares that are available to them. We have encouraged families to do window visits, and I was fortunate enough to be visiting out from the peripheral, doing a walk around a community from a distance, and was able to view from a distance a family doing one of these. And it's very meaningful for everyone to be able to see each other at a safe distance. And we've also engaged our community in helping with that. So in some cases, we've had horses that are coming to do window visits. We've had our local community walk around from a safe distance, peripheral of the building with their dogs, and have done a dog parade from a safe distance. So there's a lot of things that we're doing to engage and provide sensory and challenge the brain, and a lot of different variables that we're including in that.
I think the biggest takeaway for folks, Cameo, or the biggest takeaway that I have from this is really, it's just about finding ways in which you continue to engage your brain. And they might be simple tasks, they might be more complicated tasks, but it's about trying things that are new, stretching your comfort zone a little bit, maybe getting outside of the normal box. And I guess you can look at it many different ways, but we've been given perhaps a pause, a moment where we can stretch ourselves and do some of these things that perhaps, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks ago, we just didn't have time because life was so incredibly busy. So maybe that's the silver lining in all of this, that we can engage our brains just a little bit more as we're all trying to hunker down and not just survive, but really thrive at home. Cameo, I really appreciate you coming back with another great resource for us, all these good tips on how we can engage our brains, keep them healthy and active, and age as positively as possible into the future. As we mentioned, we'll make sure that we've got links to all these great resources that Cameo shared, and some of the different tips that she shared as well, so that you can just click on the link and download the tip sheet. We will be back again very shortly with another great resource, so make sure you keep checking back. We're adding new resources every single week with the host of great experts that we have across Emmanuel. Cameo, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, that's it. We'll be back again soon.